You're tuned into RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's RBLR Sports.
4 seconds left. In front. Happy moment. The Tampa Bay Lightning have won the first Stanley Cup. And the Tampa Bay Lightning have won the Stanley Cup. Lightning strikes twice. The Tampa Bay Lightning win their second straight Stanley Cup.
Welcome into RBLR Lightning. My name is Jake Ricker. With me today, I have Matt. Matt, we've got a couple of Lightning games to talk about. We've been very busy these last couple of months. Lightning in a full sprint before they finish the end of the season. Unfortunately, we have a couple of losses to talk about as the Lightning have continued to struggle in some recent games. But Matt, welcome back. Excited to talk about some Lightning hockey.
Thanks for having me back for a third time. And yeah, we got a couple tough losses to swallow, but a couple good wins along the way there. Unfortunately, we can't really seem to find some consistency, but hopefully we can point out some flaws and really see what's going wrong with the guys.
Well, let's start with some news. Last time we talked, we mentioned that Ryan McDonagh was out with an injury. At the time, I believe it was just there's no timetable for him to return, but the good news is he is skating and back on the ice. So good news for the Lightning in that department. We still don't know exactly when he is going to be back, but from the reports that we've seen from some people, it does seem like it's going to be soon, as they're now reporting. They said yesterday, as of this recording, that he wasn't going to play against Washington, but that tells me that it's kind of a game-by-game decision now at this point. So it seems like McDonagh should be back soon, which is good news for the Bolts, because as we'll get into some of these game recaps, they need him back.
Yeah, I honestly wasn't too worried. The first couple of games, I thought they held it down pretty well without him. So, the last 3 games or so, it's really, really now a glaring weakness, not having him in the lineup, allowing 4 to 5 plus goals per game. It's just truly, truly leaking more and more as the games go on. We could really use a steady hand like McDonagh back as soon as possible.
Let's get into some of these game recaps that we have. The first one we need to talk about is the game against the Carolina Hurricanes. The Lightning would win this one 4-3 in overtime. This was a playoff-like game, again, against the Carolina, as we've seen when the Bolts have taken them on a couple of times this year. And this was a fun one. The Lightning went 3 for 4 in the power play. They were 2 for 2 on the penalty kill, 53% in the faceoff circle. Alex Killorn, Victor Hedman, Braden Point, and Steven Stamkos all getting in on the score sheet, scoring the goals for the Lightning. And it was a battle the whole way throughout, most of the goals coming in the second period for both these teams. But the Lightning ended up trailing in the third period, but they come back, they tie it up, and then Steven Stamkos, just 52 seconds into the overtime, is able to end it for the Lightning and give them a much-needed win at this point. But despite it being a close game and going into overtime, Matt, I think this was a really solid game for the Lightning. They played well. They battled through a tough opponent and got the win. They got back to that way they were at the beginning of the season, where they were the Tampa Bay findaways. They found a way to battle and win this game.
Yeah, it was a hard-fought battle from both teams. It could have gone either way. Ultimately, the Lightning get the edge here, and I think it was a much-deserved win. Carolina, they're a great team. You can benchmark yourself against them, and I thought, again, both teams played a really, really great full 60 minutes of hockey, which is something we haven't really seen from the Lightning, at least in the last couple of weeks or months, is a full 60 minutes worth of hockey, and this truly was. Not that it was a dominating effort, but it was just, again, playoff style. I know that term gets used a lot, but I thought the Lightning did a really good job of stifling the Carolina offense. Even though they are more of a defensive team, they were still in it the whole way. There were a couple of goals or whatever, but I think, again, the Lightning, special teams showed up pretty much in every way, penalty kill and power play. So again, come out with the edge here, and not for a lack of trying either. I thought they played some of their best hockey they have in weeks.
Absolutely, and it was an exciting win again because the Lightning had just faced Carolina last week and lost to them by a 1-goal game. So, hey, a Lightning Hurricanes matchup is a potential matchup we have in the first round right now. I believe as of right now, the way the standings sit, the Lightning will be playing the Hurricanes in the first round if it ended today. Obviously, a lot can happen in these next couple of weeks here, though. But that would be a fun matchup because these two teams are right there with each other. But let's look at the next game going on to the game against Chicago, where Matt, we might as well call this one reunion night as Tyler Johnson returned to AML Arena for the first time. And then we also had Brandon Hagel, who was traded at the trade deadline, also matching up against the Blackhawks, his former team, for the first time, and as well as Taylor Radish and Boris Kachuk, both back at AML Arena for the first time. So lots of different players returning to their old teams here in Tampa. So a little bit of fun there with all of the reunions going on. The Lightning had an excellent video tribute for all three of the players, but especially for Tyler Johnson. I think all of the players, even John Cooper, said he was getting a little teary-eyed when that came up. Just quickly before we get into the game, Matt, your thoughts on Tyler Johnson and his time here at Tampa?
Well, I'd be lying if I said that I didn't shed a tear myself. I mean, he was one of my first favorite players. I'm a smaller guy myself, and I've always, I'm always a big underdog guy. He's been the underdog his entire career, going undrafted and, kind of unwanted. He was told at every level, you're too small, but he used it as motivation and really carried us, to the playoffs. He carried us to the Stanley Cup final. To the point where when he was gone, we were gone. So it's unfortunate the way that he had to leave with his cap kind of weighing us down, whatever. But again, he would put it out. Yeah, he would play with a lot of heart. He would put it out on the line every single night. He was a fan favorite for multiple people. I'm sure you guys agree, but a huge fan favorite among Bolts Nation, myself included. He was actually the first jersey I ever bought was a Tyler Johnson jersey. Again, it just really, really sweet comeback video. Again, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't tearing up myself because, again, huge fan favorite from myself. And, enough good things can't be said about the guy. You can't write the book of the Tampa Bay Lightning omitting the words Tyler Johnson. That's how much he meant to this franchise in the last 6 or 7 years he was with us.
You're absolutely right. And his name did start to come up a lot at the trade deadlines over the last couple of years, just because of the Lightning's cap situation and his cap hit. And he was ultimately, unfortunately, a cap casualty, as people like to say. But real quickly, before we move on from Tyler Johnson, I'm going to give you mine first, and then I'm going to ask you, Matt, your favorite Tyler Johnson goal. Mine has to be the goal against the Montreal Canadiens in the playoffs with 0.3 seconds left on the clock, where you thought the game was going into overtime, and Johnson gets to the front of the net and taps it home. That was one of my favorite goals. I remember jumping up and down out of my seat and could not believe that Johnson got that goal to give the Lightning the win. That was by far one of my favorite goals from him.
That's a huge contender for me. It's definitely up there. But for me personally, it's got to be his hat trick against Carolina. This was a couple of years ago, and I just so happened to be at that game. And I remember the hat trick goal. He beat the Carolina defenseman to the puck. It was just a complete 100% Gronkian effort from Johnson that ended up, it was just a hard-working play, as hard of a working play as it could be. He was sniffing for the hat trick. The place went nuts, and I got myself a half-off hat afterwards, too, courtesy of Tyler Johnson.
There you go. Well, let's get into the game. Unfortunately for Tyler Johnson, things would not go his way in his reunion night as the Lightning ultimately dominated the Blackhawks and won this game 5-2. Over 2 on the power play, though, so kind of a 180 we saw from the night before where the Lightning were 2 for 3 against Carolina. They were 0 for 2 tonight on this one. The Lightning go 3 for 4 on the penalty kill, and the Lightning got off to a 2-0 start early in this one, and you thought, well, this game might be 6-0 by the end of the night. But then the Blackhawks come back. They end up tying things up by the end of the first period, 2-2, which started to worry some Bolts fans. But then the Lightning sat down and said, Nope, not letting that happen. And they came out and played very well and ultimately win this one 5-2. And Brandon Hagel even getting an empty net goal at the end of this game, getting a goal against his former team. I'm sure he was super excited about that one, to get his second as a member of the Bolts, his 23rd of the season as well. But Matt, we talk about these games all the time as kind of being trap games where, the Blackhawks are at the bottom of the standings, but you never know. They've got a lot of superstar talent still on that roster, and they can come up and get you if you're not paying attention. It almost happened at Lightning in this one.
Yeah, I thought it was really funny. I was thinking to myself after that Johnson tribute, I'm like, oh man, you know what? It's got to be really tough for a guy, having the whole arena cheering for you, but you're on the, opposing team now. And, I'm thinking like, oh man, it's really got to throw you off and, probably the whole team off. And maybe a minute after that, Calvin DeHaan scores kind of a weaker goal on Vasilevsky. I just thought it was kind of funny. I was laughing to myself after that. But yeah, Chicago, they're not necessarily, they're definitely struggling right now, but they've got a lot of offensive weapons. They've still got Patrick Kane, who's producing like a madman. Alex DeBrincat, still one of the most underrated players in the league, and he gets one past Vasilevsky. They got a lot of holes to plug and a lot of things to fix. Hopefully some of the guys that we sent over could be part of the solution there. But yeah, again, they're a team that they'll strike when the iron's hot, but unfortunately they couldn't weather the storm that the Lightning brought later on.
Yeah, they really locked things down and ended up securing those 2 points. And, well, at this point, Matt, things were looking up. You got a nice win against Carolina. You took care of the Chicago Blackhawks. You're now in this long, mostly stretch of home games here in the final month of April. And you got the Montreal Canadiens coming into town back-to-back. But you're thinking get another nice 2 points and keep the good times rolling. Unfortunately, that's not what happened in this game, and this would be the start of an unfortunate stretch for the Lightning that we've seen here in the last couple of games. The Lightning went up early in this one, just like they did against the Chicago Blackhawks, going up 2-0 in for a period, but then the Canadiens, now coached by Marty St. Louis, who has been phenomenal over there in Montreal. He really given them new life, and they battled back and did not give up this entire game, and it eventually is the Canadiens that win this one in a shootout after they tied it late in the third period by a final score of 5-4, excuse me. So the Lightning go 2 for 3 on the power play in this one, 47% in the faceoff circle. They do go 2 for 2 on the penalty kill. So the stats were there, but it was the collapse, after having a really good start late in that third period and letting the Canadiens claw their way back into this one. Brian Elliott, who was in net for this game back-to-back, was once again fantastic. I know there were a lot of goals scored by the Canadiens, but most of these goals were defensive breakdowns, odd man rushes that you don't expect Elliott to stop. And he also made some top-tier saves on some grade A chances to keep the Lightning in this game, especially in overtime as well. So once again, the Lightning let down Brian Elliott and lose 2 points that they should have had.
Surely that won't become a theme.
You would think, but that's the way it's been going.
Yeah, no, Brian Elliott, he's not anyone to point fingers at for this loss. I mean, the Canadiens just kept on getting these odd man rushes for whatever reason. The Lightning were completely controlling the game, honestly, offensively. They had the puck in the offensive zone, I would say somewhere 75% of the time. It honestly was really good possession numbers from the Lightning, but you can't win the game just for stifling the offense of the Canadiens. They're going to find other ways to score, and they definitely did. It seemed like every chance that the Lightning got, that there was an odd man rush the other way, which in my opinion is always a scoring chance if you had to write it down. And I'm not sure what it is, but it was going on from pretty much 10 minutes into the first through the rest of the game. It seems like they couldn't figure it out, or even maybe didn't even want to figure it out. I'm not sure what happened in this game. Like it's hard to point fingers at anybody who really played bad. I mean, you could definitely point fingers at people who played lazy, but again, I think the whole team kind of played lazy. They weren't super emotionally invested in this game, especially considering Montreal's position in the standings. again, it was just pure lack of effort, and the physicality was not there whatsoever, which is something I know they're just completely miles below you, but you can still bring a little bit of a physical edge to keep the game down, to make stifle the Canadians, make them not want to make the same plays that may have worked the time before, these little finesse plays. That's just my personal opinion on it. This game is honestly kind of enigmatic in a way, just considering how it all unfolded throughout 60, 65, 70 minutes of hockey.
I think you nailed it on the head when you said it was about, they just weren't, they didn't have their head in the game. They were kind of, they took the Canadians as a bottom tier team where they are in the standings, and they kept letting them claw back into this. They gave the Canadians the opportunity to get back in this game. The Canadians took advantage, to their credit. But I think the most frustrating things for Bulls fans is the way they let Brian Elliott down again. Brian Elliott has had a couple of games now. The Edmonton one is the first one that pops into my head, and then this one as well, where he's played outstanding. He's made a ton of great saves, and the Lightning end up losing the game. It's frustrating for a guy, I'm sure, like Brian Elliott. He played really, really well, though. The Lightning wanted an upgrade at backup in their goaltending position, and they got it in Brian Elliott. But the Lightning, for whatever reason, continued to struggle, and they're going to need Brian Elliott to continue to do what he's done in these next in this next stretch of games here, as we continue to get set for the playoffs. As you want to give Vasilevsky some rest, but it's hard to say if we'll win those games because for whatever reason, the Lightning don't want to win for Brian Elliott. I hope they're at least buying him some nice steak dinners after these games because he deserves it. But moving on to the next game, this one was an even tougher loss. Things would not get better for the Lightning. I unfortunately was at this game where the Lightning would fall 6-2 to the Toronto Maple Leafs. And Matt, for me personally, I said before this game started, I said, listen, you got 3 big games coming up here: Toronto, Washington, and Boston. All playoff teams, right there in the standings, to be bouncing up and down with us in the division. This is a big test for the Lightning, and it did not get off on the right foot whatsoever. Early on in the game, it was a battle. Leafs got an early goal. Lightning tied it up. Austin Matthews then gets the Leafs back ahead. Lightning tied again at 2-2, and you're thinking, all right, this is going to be a battle, playoff experience. It's been a really fun game so far. And then the Lightning, I guess, quit. It's like that joke, in EA Sports NHL game. The Lightning's controller must have disconnected at this point, and they were just gone as the Toronto Maple Leafs would go on to win this one 6-2. Austin Matthews completing the hat trick. There were a ton of Leafs fans at this game, by the way, which is becoming a major issue for the Lightning and having these opposing fans down there. Hats were flying down onto the ice, and it was a deflating, humbling loss, if you will. Just nothing went right for the Lightning whatsoever in this game.
Yeah, I'm not even going to say lucky enough, but this was for some reason the game that I chose to not watch all the way through. I was actually at a friend's house, and I was only half paying attention to the game. I saw it was 1-0, 1-2, 2-1, 2-2, and I was kind of gaining my attention. And then goal after goal after goal after goal. I honestly did not watch a whole hell of a lot of it. I could probably put some pieces together given current themes that have been going on with the Lightning. And again, probably just a lack of effort, lack of physicality. I really didn't watch past the third period or so. I'd glance at it, whatever, but you could just kind of tell the energy wasn't there. They weren't going anywhere. With the season ticket members selling their tickets and it being flooded with Toronto fans. That's just kind of a consequence of being in Tampa. It's just such a melting pot for for snowbirds and just everybody in the world. Tampa's just such a melting pot, and obviously everybody wants to come here. So, it just kind of comes with the location. It's unfortunate. I wish, some people would not necessarily sell out to the opposing teams, but at least Leafs jerseys kind of blend in enough with the Lightning jerseys.
That's what I originally said when I was there until the Toronto Maple Leafs scored and 80% of those fans started standing up. That's when you could tell the difference, and it was frustrating. But that's a problem for another day. But you're right. You didn't miss anything in this game. You didn't miss much because it was just a disaster. One player I think needs to be called out in this game, though, that I specifically noticed since I was there watching it. I had to sit through the full entire 60 minutes. Zach Bogosian did not have a good game in this game. He had a lot of bad turnovers. One of them, which led to a Toronto goal. He kind of just he loves to do this thing where he'll kind of spin around and backhand the puck when trying to hold it in or clear it. I don't know why he does that. If he thinks it's a fancy move, it's going to fool guys. It doesn't work. I can tell you that much, though. And it was an issue for the Lightning in this game. And then especially as the Maple Leafs started to run away with this one, the Lightning just could not find a groove. They could not get back into this one at all. And Toronto continued to force turnovers. And to Toronto's credit, they played a fantastic game and they took advantage of everything that happened in this one. But it was the turnovers. Turnovers were a major issue for the Lightning in this game. They created a lot of them. Vassy didn't even have his best game. But again, you can't even blame him that much. Just the way the Lightning played in front of them. So a frustrating loss after that. And you thought, well, maybe the Lightning will learn from this one because even the players after the game, Cooper said, I believe he said, listen, if you're comparing this to see where we are ready for the playoffs, we're miles away from where we need to be. And the players kind of echoed that sentiment. And Maroon was talking about how they need to be way better if they want to get on another playoff run as we approach the end of the season here. So you thought, all right, we go into Washington against another playoff team. Maybe they're going to flip the switch, get back to that way of the Lightning who we always enjoyed, who never lost back-to-back games. And that did not happen whatsoever. As we are recording the night of this game, the Lightning fall to the Washington Capitals by a final score of 4-3. And this game to me, Matt, felt like they didn't start on time, and that was ultimately why they lost this game. They go down 2-0 early in this game, taking penalties early again, and they're able to claw their way back into this one, eventually, only trailing by 1 at 2-3 at the end of the first period. But then a couple of weak calls that did go both ways. We'll get into that in a little bit. But never able to fully complete the comeback. They pull within 1 late in the third period. They had a chance as Washington got called for a late penalty, but they're not able to convert. They did make a push, but they do fall 4-3 against Washington and have now dropped yet another game and are on a pretty major losing streak right now. And I think people are starting to get worried.
Yeah, like I know I came in here the other day saying don't hit the panic button just yet, but you should still keep it close. Just right there. But yeah, you're correct saying that they didn't start on time. I mean, it was like 2 goals in 5-10 minutes or something. And you could tell, I mean, everything was just going Washington's way. It may have not even been that long, actually. And yeah, they just taken not stupid penalties, but just unneeded penalties. And yeah, calls were soft both ways, I'll admit, but
Both ways, yes.
It's really, really difficult to win games when you're chasing, especially, that early on. It just kind of changes the complexion of the game. You're going to be chasing the entire way. Great that we could kind of stay in it for pretty much the whole time. You could tell that, the second period, the momentum kind of died off. I know that this game was honestly actually kind of crazy. A lot really happened in it. But yeah, Vazzy wasn't his best. It's hard to blame everything on him. I'll be the last person to blame everything on him. But there were some he had to have. He did have one crazy save. It was like a sky hop, came down right in front of Vasilevsky, and he just wasn't ready, or he was ready for it, but it just caught him way by surprise. This was earlier in the first period after he let in, the 2 quick goals. Fortunately, Kucherov, I thought he played really well the first period, really getting some good chances, and then just kind of started, taking some skates around the ice, looking a little more leisurely as the game went on until it really came to crunch time. And that's when he just turns on another gear. It's like, where has that been, the last 35 minutes? You were flying around the whole first period and just kind of disappear throughout the second and, early into the third. And then the last 5 minutes of the game, he was everywhere making plays. He took a 2-minute 10-second shift. Same thing with Point and Stamkos. It was just a weird game that they were just chasing the entire time.
Yeah, you saw, after the first two Washington goals, the Lightning, they turned it on. They had a really good shift. Kucherov pulls them within one at that point when he scored. And then again, they kind of just fell back apart again. They have showed signs where they're like, listen, we can still compete at that championship level that we have for the past, 3 seasons now. But they can't play for a full 60 minutes. And when you're going up against playoff teams, that's not going to cut it. And that's why, they ultimately lose this game again. I do want to give credit, though, to Nick Paul, though, who has been fantastic for the Lightning. I know a lot of people were disappointed when Joseph left. Joseph has done pretty well for himself over in Ottawa. I know he had a hat trick recently as well, so congratulations to him. But Nick Paul has been fantastic. He's been playing hard. He skates a lot faster than most people would think for his size. He's got a couple goals as a member of the Lightning now as well, has one in this game. But Matt, your thoughts on Nick Paul so far? I've been loving what I've seen from him.
I agree with you. Like when I came on here, the day after the trade deadline, I was more excited about Hagel just from my first reactions. I thought Hagel was going to be kind of the piece that really stands out and kind of maybe takes us over the edge. But honestly, I'm kind of seeing that from Paul unexpectedly. I assumed Paul was going to be more of a defense-first kind of guy. I didn't know much about him before he came to the team. But everything I have seen from him so far has been phenomenal. It seems like he puts in the effort every single shift that he takes, and it's really commendable how he's came into this team who has been in a slump. Let's not mince words here. They've been in a slump for the last month and a half, and he comes in and just acts like everything's fine and is trying to lead by committee as just kind of a brand new fresh face on the team. It's really, really commendable. Shows a lot about his character and his game. He again, great defensively, but I did not expect the little offensive flashes from him. He had that insane between the legs assist in that Chicago game over to Colton. A really, really nice snipe in this Washington game we just saw. He brings it every single time. I've got nothing bad to say about him.
I've loved it, and hopefully he can continue to do that even into the playoffs as well, and hopefully the rest of the team picks up his mojo. I think is the best way to put it, because he is playing fantastic. He's been the one bright spot for the Lightning. I know it's been frustrating Lightning fans, but I do have something that maybe will cheer you guys up. Make sure you head over to rblr.com and check out our merch store. We just dropped a brand new shirt, the Tampa Bay Chant shirt, if you will. It is an awesome design. I love it personally. Comes in multiple colors, blue, black, gray color as well. And if you use the code BOLTS at checkout, you get 10% off your order. And we've got all different kinds of shirts for all the teams: Lightning, Rays, Bucks, Rowdies, all that great stuff. So be sure to go over our website and check that out as well. But Matt, before we get into the preview for this next week, let me ask you this. I think a lot of people are wondering right now, what is the issue for the Lightning? Is it the offense? Is it the defense? Is this a mental issue? Are they, fatigued from these long playoff runs, these back-to-back Stanley Cup runs, because that's a lot of hockey. There's a reason it's really hard to three-peat. It's because you have to play a ton of hockey and people start to learn your game. What do you think, though, is the overarching issue for the Lightning right now?
They've played more hockey than any other team in the last 3 years or 2-ish years. They have to be tired, and I know that's not a easy excuse I can really use, because every other team, they're battling the same kind of thing. Obviously, some teams haven't made these long playoff pushes, 2 runs to the finals and winning. That takes a lot out of you. That's why it's nearly impossible to three-peat in today's world. It's one of the many reasons why. But yeah, they could not have the playoffs come soon enough. That's probably where their heads are at. It's like, not just get to the playoffs, but man, I wish we were, in the playoffs. They're not going to be begging for it like a team, kind of gunning for the spot. They're not using it as motivation. It's honestly kind of a hindrance to them, in my opinion. They want to be playing kind of more structured yet loose hockey somehow. The playoffs are different. There's just a different atmosphere in the building the moment it's a Stanley Cup playoff game, and they play different under those Stanley Cup playoff rules. Everybody knows officiating, it switches like a light when the playoff comes on, and so does teams' play styles, especially in the first round. And I think that's when they play their best hockey, is when, you have to lay everything on the line. And they're just kind of, it's honestly kind of, thematic. It's a theme that's been plaguing the Lightning the last couple of years. They come out, white hot. They light up the lamp, the first half of the season, and then really just kind of meander their way into the playoffs. Even if they have good seeding or whatever, don't tell me that it's not a theme.
No, you're absolutely right. And I don't think it's what Bolts fans want to hear, but I think it's the truth. It's they talk about all the time. You want to get hot at the right time. And we're getting into that territory now where this is the time you want to get hot. But the bottom line for the Lightning is, they're struggling right now, but as long as they can flip that switch, that mental switch, whatever it is, they should be okay because they've got the talent. There's no question about that. I mean, they've got some fantastic playmakers on this team and leaders as well that it can easily take them deep into the playoffs and maybe have a chance at a three-peat, but they're going to have to flip that switch, whether it's just a couple games before the playoffs start or it's right when the playoffs start, because that will ultimately decide how these playoffs are going to be. And listen, it's going to be a tough run this year. There's a lot of good teams in the East. This is not going to be an easy run. Hopefully, though, will be fun for hockey fans to watch. Let's take a look at the couple of the upcoming games here for the Lightning. I'm going to run through the schedule quickly, and we'll try and look at a couple of the games before we come back to you next week. So we have Boston is the next game on Friday. This game at home for the Lightning, another playoff team coming up here. Remember, I said this was the stretch of games where there's going to be a big test for the Lightning. They unfortunately lost 2 of those 3 so far. Hopefully they can salvage it, though, and beat Boston and climb their way back in the standings because the Atlantic Division is still very close as of right now. Then they're going to be taking on the Buffalo Sabres on Sunday. And then it's off to Dallas for a real quick road trip. And then the Lightning will be starting their longest homestand of the season at 5 games, where they're taking on Anaheim, Winnipeg, Detroit, Toronto, and Nashville. We will be back, though, after that Detroit game to recap some of the games there. Matt, any thoughts on those games coming up here?
Obviously, this Boston one's going to be the most important in the near future. This is going to be a game to watch, though. It seems like, again, another pattern that I've noticed the last couple of years is the late Boston games are always some of the most entertaining, and it seems like we win them as well. There are definitely, battles out there. I remember one a couple of years ago. There were a couple shorthanded goals. I think Pat Maroon and Chara they threw down the gloves and got things going. They're just always very intense physical games. It's going to be one you should not miss. The Buffalo game that, hopefully, optimistically, they're an easy opponent, but Buffalo's playing some of their best hockey they've played in years, with new leadership in there and just kind of, something to play for, some mojo there. So with a nice long homestand coming up, at least to finish out the season against kind of some distant opponents. You said the Ducks and Winnipeg were in there.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's good to not really, kind of play a playoff opponents right before the season ends, but you also do kind of want to get a taste of what you might be matched up against. But I guess that's what they're learning here in these, last couple of games against Boston, Toronto, Carolina, who they could potentially match up with.
The playoff teams that they have left, I'll run through this really quickly. It's going to be Boston, and then Toronto they have one more time, and then they're going to be at Florida as well. So if you're looking to see how the Lightning match up against playoff teams, those are the 3 biggest games that jump out at me. I don't think anybody else is a playoff team. As of this moment anyway. I don't know how the West is shaping up out there. Meanwhile, the East is pretty much set as of who's going to be in the playoffs. Let's quickly, before we wrap this show up, look at the standings around the league right now. As I mentioned, it's very close in the Atlantic Division. As of right now, after this game, the Lightning sit in that first wild card spot, which means they would be playing the Carolina Hurricanes as of right now, as they are the second best team overall in the Eastern Conference. And that's been a fun one, as I mentioned earlier. But it's still very close between all of these teams. Toronto at 96, Boston at 93, and Tampa still at 93 as well. And everybody at 70 games played as well. So still anything can happen in these next couple of weeks.
Bolt's lucky number is 7 to get in the playoffs to finally clinch a spot.
Correct. And, I mean, it pretty much is already set in stone, but it will be nice to have that X against our names as well. Just that little bit of security, right? That
sooner than later, preferably.
Okay. The Lightning actually have games coming up against the Islanders. It's more later in the season, I believe. I mean, hopefully, fingers crossed, don't want to jinx anything here. They will have clinched by that point, but they will have some games coming up against the Islanders soon. And then we do have 2 teams that did already clinch in the Florida Panthers and the Colorado Avalanche. So, hey, Panthers are having a fun time right now. They're up at the top of the league. But you have to wonder, is this going to be Florida's, 2019 season, if you will, where they're at the top of the league, running around, having some fun, and then maybe run into the wall at the playoffs? That's what happened for the Lightning, but only time will tell.
I'm glad I'm not the only one getting those same vibes. The way that they've been winning games, yes, they've been very high scoring, but I mean, they've come back from multi-goal deficits. They came back against Toronto from a 4-goal deficit. A lot of these wins, again, they're extreme offensive efforts, and they do look reminiscent of the 2019 Lightning. And you shouldn't really take that as an insult. To me, that's kind of a compliment, but you can't waste all of your talent during the regular season. It'd be nice for the Panthers to finally shed their playoff demons, or what little that they have, or just get past a round. But again, who knows? To me personally, I don't think this is their year. The way that they play, it's not sustainable.
Hey, 2019 ended up being the best thing that ever happened to this franchise. We didn't know it at the time. It was painful, very painful, but ended up being the best thing for us. And hey, Florida's been playing a lot better, and they are definitely a team of the future right now. They look very, very good, and it's going to be a lot of fun playoff matchups, as I mentioned earlier. But I think that's going to do it for us in this episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, wherever you're listening here, whether it's on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get and listen to us here. If you could do us a huge favor as well, hit that subscribe button, give us that 5-star rating wherever you may be. It really helps us out, and we really appreciate it. So thank you guys for sticking around and listening us to it here. Matt, I'll give you the final word before we end the show. What you got for us?
Well, thank you guys for tuning in again, and thank you for having me, you guys as well. Hopefully we can string together some wins here and really stop with the multi-game losing streaks.
You said it. Let's have some wins to talk about in the next episode. Go Bolts, guys.
Let's come back with a better attitude.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.